Hi, welcome to Something to Offer. I'm Dontoya Thomason. And boy, on today's episode, I just need to talk to y'all. I just want somebody to talk to. When I'm online talking to you guys about this podcast, so many of you, especially women, will say, Dawn, I feel like we're just friends. I feel like I know you. I feel like we're friends. I feel like we could hang out. And I'm like, you know what? Bet. This is how I want you to feel. And I could just use that type of camaraderie today, because I've been vexed gearing up for this podcast because we have had a busy March. I feel like we went from crazy quarantine, no action last March to this was the first time at the year anniversary of sort of the whole kickoff of this whole thing, of just having a house that was action oriented. My friend Ashley Kaminsky, who was on the podcast last time, came to stay with me. She was going to stay for a couple days, but then she stayed for 7, which was epic. I loved it. I wish she'd come back. She helped me organize my pantry. We could have painted my kitchen, but I was too tired. But now I'm like, why didn't I take her up on that? That's not the point. As soon as she left, Ab and I went and taught, out of town. It was my first post-COVID flight. And apparently I missed the season of flying during COVID where they were still sitting you spaced apart from people, because I was literally sitting right next to a woman that I did not know on one of those small planes, 2 seats side by side, only the 2 seats on each side. And we were literally touching shoulders. So thankfully my husband got us to switch, somebody to switch seats so I could sit by him. And eventually they said, hey, you can move around if you're seated next to a person that you don't know. But y'all, it's real out here. Things are straight up back to normal. That's what it felt like. So anyway, that's besides the point. Right after that, we came back. My niece came into town. And then as soon as she left, my sister-in-law and my brother-in-law came into town. And my sister-in-law just left this morning. And so it was lots of fun, but it's the most action that we've had, in our house, really in a year. And so it kind of pushed me to this podcast happening, today, which I usually like for it to be a few days before. But I thought, gosh, instead of talking about something abstract, I really just wanted to talk about what has been on my mind. And I've been consumed lately with people's stories. I've read more in 2020 and 2021 than I'm not exaggerating, than I've read. I mean, as a parent, since I've had kids, my reading has dropped significantly, with good reason. But I just haven't read. And so I've read so much. I've listened to stuff on Audible. And so I just wanted to share some of the stories that I've been reading that have actually made me think about my story and the struggle that I'm having lately with parenting or momming. And so many of these people's stories and how they lived and how they were raised have really just shown a greater light. I'm always thinking about this, but shown a greater light on my need to want to do this well, and to have the capacity for each of my kids, ranging from 3 to 12, in each of their precious seasons of life. And to be honest, it has been really hard. It's just been hard to meet all 3 people exactly where they're at in their age, in their phases, in their good times and their bad times, while also being responsible for myself and what it means to run a house and a life outside of the house. So that has just had me in my feelings and my thoughts. And so I want to talk about that. And I don't have any answers. I kind of want this to be an ongoing conversation that goes from the podcast to, Instagram or online in some sort of way, maybe onto a live. And I want to have other guests come back and talk about this, because parenting is hard. Momming is hard. And I just want to keep the conversation going, because I actually sent out a bunch of questions to my friends and polled them just to kind of get some encouragement about, what they were doing. So I want to share those questions with you that maybe you can ask yourself, and that we can talk about it outside of this. So that's really what's going on, friends. I just, I need to start smoking cigarettes, I think, because I'm stressed when it comes to just making sure that I am doing what needs to be done to parent well. And y'all know I'm joking. I ain't gonna be smoking no cigarettes. Also, if you're watching this podcast, can you get into this look that like it's really late at night and I'm really exhausted? But my housemate gave me a little like old school look, and I have new pictures on my wall. I don't know if any of y'all can see this. Probably not because they're blurred out for the camera. But I went vintage shopping, which is like my absolute favorite thing to do, and got some Diana Ross and the Supremes photos to add to my wall. I got the beautiful Angela Davis back here, young Lisa Bonet, Lena Horne, and Claire's finally on the wall. I know y'all have seen Claire up here for so long. So if you're not watching, maybe go on IG and check it out. Like, you can't see these photos, but I wanted to say big shout out to my housemate for giving me the vibes, like the old school black women vibes. I needed it for tonight. Now I do have on like black sweatpants, but this is what we're talking about today, right? Stay focused. So I just wanted y'all to get into it and respect, the look going with the legend. So anyways, I'm going to get into this podcast. So let's do it. All right, friends. So a lot has been going on in between podcast episode. And so I just want to take a little breather and just chit chat with y'all about what's been going on and this, parenting struggle, and really why I felt the freedom to talk about it. And it's because of some of the things that have been going on. Like, one, I mentioned I would like to know what books y'all are reading, because right now I am super into memoirs. I have been nonstop consuming memoirs, and I'm going to tell you about a few of them. This is not a plug. No one's asked me to do this, but I have just been getting so much from listening to people's stories, and that it's starting to make me think about my life more. A lot of these books, people will talk about, how they were raised, things that their parents did or didn't do that aided them in becoming who they were or hindered them in becoming who they were, what they do to their kids, their influences in work, et cetera, et cetera. And so I'm just like consumed right now with memoirs. Some of the ones I've read, and these are the only ones I recommend. I've read a lot lately. I mean, y'all, I've never read more than probably in 2020, 2021. So that's a big deal for me. But I would say, gosh, probably the best memoir I read this year was Mariah Carey's memoir. You need to get it on Audible. You need to listen to it. Even if you're not a Mariah Carey fan, I think that this book is just about storytelling. Her childhood, some of you that don't know about her, like, pause. She has this perception of being a diva, kind of like, she's obnoxious, she's extra, and she is extra. But I think one thing that I've always gotten, and that I understand and that you hear clearly in this book, is that she's extra because it's who she is, but it's a little bit of an act. And it's funny. She's hilarious, and she's kind of doing it on purpose. And I think it's something that you have to understand, all the dolling and like, I don't remember this person and that person. It's like a shtick. She's hilarious. And this book is hilarious. And at the end of the day, you have to remember, Mariah Carey is a girl from New York. Like, she's like a hardcore girl who, really rose up in the ranks and made her way off of like sheer talent. I ain't supposed to be going on this long about this book, but like just the talent. I've loved her since I was a very little kid. I have never gotten off Mariah Carey, and the book is amazing. It talks about her childhood, but it stirred up in me like, some of the traumas from childhood and how they really affect you no matter where you go in life, no matter how successful you become. You can't run from some of the things that happen in your childhood. And I think that she really does a great job of kind of trying to unpack that. And you leave that book thinking, well, if I hear another rumor about her, like, I can choose not to believe it because this girl has laid it all out there. And so that was really refreshing for me. And it gave me sort of, the confidence to talk to people in conversations and just want to lay it out there because it's so helpful to other people. So that's fantastic. And I said get Audible because she sings throughout there. And if you really are a fan of her music, she tells you like the why behind a lot of songs, but it is not like just, oh my God, it's like a history lesson in music. It is a masterclass. So anyways, that was a big one. I also read Lecrae's Restore Me. I always want to say Restoration because that was the album, but it's not. It's Restore Me. And I'm not just saying this because I know him. Like, it really is an encouraging book. I would like listen to it while I walked around my neighborhood. And it really was just refreshing to hear somebody talk about the obstacles that they had to go through. And not just obstacles, like a state of mind, like struggling with mental health and trying to be all things to all people, still trying to parent, and the grace that God has for you in the midst of trying to, navigate life, go through issues, provide for your family, grow through your mistakes and heal from your traumas and the trauma you've inflicted on people. So I think he was very honest. His book was very good. And I just think it's just a powerful testimony that there's restoration to be had for all of us. So that's another story that I've kind of filtered through during this process of like 2020, 2021, just kind of get people's stories into my life to help me look at my story. I also listened to, and this is going to feel like it's coming out of left field, but maybe not. I'm cool to say it, but I listened to Jessica Simpson's memoir, and that one was low-key crazy. I mean, in a good way. Like, I think sort of like Mariah Carey, like she, even more than Mariah Carey, Jessica Simpson laid it all on the line. I'm from Texas. She's from Texas. I know people that like went to her same vocal school where she kind of blew up. Her dad was in that church circle. And so I was more interested in like somebody telling this story from a place that I'm from and what that looked like. And boy, when it comes to parenting, that was a difficult book to read, because for as much success as Jessica Simpson had, I think it was very honest and very telling that what your parents impart to you that is important will stick with you. And sometimes that's good and sometimes that's bad. And so a lot of the reason why she was focused so much on her image, her sexuality, her weight was a lot from, her parenting, and then also growing up in that industry. She spills the tea on like John Mayer and stuff. So you're into all that, that's fun too. But it was just an honest and really inspirational memoir. Now I will say this: I have I was like nervous too. We're friends, right? I can say this. You guys won't tell anybody. I had a little bit of like nervousness listening to it because I thought her voice would annoy me. Is that wrong? Is that rude? I don't know. I'll pray about it, because I do struggle with voices like that. I've hated my voice since I was little. I've gotten over it now, but recorded voices, it can bother me. But it actually turned out to be fine. Gosh, she's super honest. Honestly, if you just want to hear somebody be honest about, the surgeries they've had, their struggles in marriage, that's the book to listen to. Okay. I'm on this journey of all the stories that I've taken. And what other story I've taken? And right now I'm currently reading and haven't finished Cicely Tyson's Just As I Am. The thread of like parenting and being parented well and the things that parents put down in children is really throughout any memoir. And I think that that's why it's so prevalent in my mind. So I feel like if you really want to engage with your own story, it's so important to read other people's stories. Her book right now is really beautiful to me because it's just this woman that, lived to be 96, who just barely finished and put this out days before she died unexpectedly. And you say unexpectedly, she was 96. However, the last interview she did with Gayle King, this lady was like looking and acting more energetic than I do every morning. So, but it, because she was 96, you have this book that spans through decades. You have somebody who lived through the assassination of Martin Luther King, who lived in like housing projects specifically for Black Americans, and she's West Indian, but you have like a true immigrant story, a true Black Hollywood success story, but also who tells the real elements of being Black at that time. And, all the Diane Carrolls and James Earl Jones, all the people that we love and respect. Maya Angelou, like she literally grew up in the industry with them before they were like super famous, respected, and then even just, we knew them as famous, but just really how the treatment of Black people, how little they were paid for what they did, and just the the racism that they still endured. She talks about her, romance, love affair with Miles Davis, the famous, musician who was also a drug addict. I mean, it's a very powerful book, and I'm not finished with it yet, but I just think a book like that is so beautiful because I just can learn so much from older people. I love it. I love it. I love it. And it's just rich. And so she doesn't read the book. Another woman does, but I think this woman is West Indian, and I like how she jumps back and forth with the accents. Okay, I'm going to wrap this part up, but I also read for the second time Michelle Obama's Becoming, which is always like so inspiring to me. Barack Obama. Now I'm going to be honest with y'all. I love Barry O. But I think that you have to be a certain type of personality to really get through that. I listened to it, and I think it was over 30 hours, and I enjoyed it, but it is a history lesson more than it is a memoir. He does tell a little bit about his wife and his family, but it is mostly like, and then on, the day that bin Laden was killed, this happened. I mean, some of it's riveting. Some of it, y'all don't tell Obama I said this in case I could, meet him, but some of it's a little bit of a snooze fest. But I really think it's worth reading. One, because I think in such a politically charged time, people are always saying what a president or Congress or Senate should and shouldn't be doing. But then you read a book like his or listen to him tell the story, and you realize how little power these people actually have when there's people like Mitch McConnell, really doing whatever they can to go against him just because he's, a Democrat, president. And so it was very eye-opening. It can be hopeful at times, but it also could, maybe take away some of your idealism, if you have any left, let's stop playing, about what it means to get bills passed and how hard the work is there. But I mean, that's only part one. And it was, again, it was like 30 hours. I think it was over 700 and something pages. So that's definitely one that, only read that if you really have a lot of time. So that's really it on that story. Also, I'm also trying to read Live Beautiful by Athena Calderon. It looks like a coffee table book because it's beautiful, but it's about interior design. That's another thing that I'm obsessed with right now. But all of these stories, especially Michelle Obama's book for the second time, it has really continued to bring me to deal with how I parent, how I want to parent, how I was parented, and, the value of trying to do that well. And I just think that's something that you have to do. You have to think about repeatedly. You have to do in community, and you have to have grace for yourself. And another thing that pointed me to this was my interview with Ashley. And for you guys that didn't see it, you really need to check it out. Ashley was adopted, and she talks about her story of, the trauma of her 0 to 4, and really how not dealing with the trauma of her adoption has led her to find herself in some parenting moments that she's not proud of. And she never really expounded on that. And I don't want to minimize it because, we all, have our things. But I also realized in talking to her that moms, brown moms, white moms, whatever moms, Asian moms, we are so hard on ourselves. And, we are living a story as we try to allow our kids and our spouse to live a story. And it was really her story as well that just made me think gosh, we need to talk about this more consistently, because in the podcast, she said that she didn't connect with her son when he was born. And I confess that I too, in the beginning of my first daughter's birth, did not connect with her. Not because I wasn't obsessed, who doesn't love a tiny thing, she was edible, beautiful, delicious. But I just felt like a fraud because I just, wasn't sure that I should have a small person to take care of for the rest of, hopefully, my life. And so, but I remember getting messages and the struggle it was for her to say that out loud, and even for me to say out loud, because we don't say out loud enough the things we think about when it comes to this job, because it's embarrassing. It's shameful. It's we think that we're supposed to have this all together. Now, I know on the side with our friends, we might say, yo, I'm struggling. But parenting can become a real comparison game, not just between other families, but even in your home of like, man, I don't parent like my husband does, or I don't parent like my wife does. And, we sometimes do more hiding than we do getting the help that we need, or getting the encouragement that we need. And so it's her story, and it's the stories in all these memoirs that I've just, I've been able to like understand that, man, you do have some things that you're concerned of, like, what will their story look like because of what you do or don't do? And I said in the last podcast, and I'll say it again, I do have this saying that I say all the time. And I say that, I know my kids will be in counseling for me. I just want to be the first 15 minutes of the conversation and not the whole hour. And I say that, because parenting is just too important of a job. And I can either come to grips with now that, like, I'm going to make mistakes, or I can just try to be perfect and, cause a whole mess for myself and them, later on. And so, my story is that I homeschool a 12-year-old, a 9-year-old, and a 3-year-old. And that's all I know. This is not like a COVID homeschool. This is what we've been doing since my daughter was really little. Like, we are a family that have never really had a TV in the house. We do now. We keep it in the basement, and the kids are only allowed to watch it on the weekends, or unless, or something special happens. Like this week, we kind of made it spring break because we had lots of people in town. And so they were able to watch it at that point. But so when Zipporah my oldest, was like really little, we started just, we started with My Baby Can Read. I don't know if y'all remember that. It's like an old, really boring looking video, but it teaches your, like, from infant age, how to like sight read words. And I look back now, and her uncle got her that. It was like a nice gift. And I look back now and I'm like, I was really stressing myself over this for a whole lot of night. It was a lot of sight words. It was a lot of recognition. I don't know if they were actually, she wasn't phonetically reading. But eventually, because we had no TV, we just, I did letters with Zipporah every day. I, did workbooks. That's all there was to do. And she was my only child. So it was, fun. It was our way of playing. And in the end, she actually ended up reading just before she turned 4. And even as I say that now, it always seems like, no, that can't be true. But just for fun, I'll probably post a little video of her, because, y'all, she was so cute. And I didn't realize what a phenomenon that was, that this tiny person with this little afro could read, in this tiny voice about, like, I remember her reading about the opera singer Barbara Jordan out loud to me while I did her hair. And I just thought, what a little, sweet girl. But anyway, all that to say is, from then, we've been homeschooling ever since. And, I don't think that's my spiritual gift. It's something that I do. It's something that I honor. But it's really difficult for me to get up day in and day out and do it. And we have our reasons why we do it as a family. This is what we decided to do. I don't know if we'll do it always. I don't look down on public school. And honestly, if it wasn't for COVID, this would probably, y'all, it's hard. This would probably be the time that I look into putting at least her in school. Although we've always said that if she went to school, it'd either be elementary or high school, because middle school is no time to start school, because kids are wild in middle school. And, I remember being in middle school, and I think it was a combination of, like, you're not quite an adult, but you're not really that cute to be getting away with stuff that elementary school kids did. You felt grown, but you weren't grown, and people didn't have a lot of sympathy for you because you were doing your own hair and your bangs were fried, and you just weren't as cute, as like the 2-year-old that could get away with murder. So I really felt like, it was just, what an awkward time. And I remember being so swayed by what other kids said and did, because I didn't know who I was. And I knew a lot of kids like that. And I still kind of see that middle school, middle grade group of kids really wrestling. And I want my daughter to be able to experience wrestling. I'm not keeping her from wrestling, but I really do want her to go into school at a season where she's secure and, ready for it. So anyway, that's a whole other topic. But this job for me is day in and day out. And recently, I have really been crashing up against the fact that I have 3 people with 3 different personalities, all in 3 different phases of life. Like, Zipporah is 12 and she's very smart, very beautiful. She's growing, but she has her own 12-year-old things. There's things she doesn't want to be bothered with anymore. There's things that she's interested in that the smaller kids are interested in. She doesn't want to go outside and play anymore. She doesn't want to play with toys anymore, but she has a 9-year-old brother who was like her best friend, who still is, but who definitely wants to go outside and play, who definitely wants to play Legos with her. And you can see him starting to feel like the distance coming in. But also he's in his own phase. And we say that this kid needs to be like the president of the United States, because you have never met a more persistent kid. And it's beautiful and it's valuable. And yet all day long, it can really do something to your nerves when, you have a kid that won't take no for an answer about anything, about snacks, about are we doing school today, about do I have to do this work, about can I wear this, can I not wear this, do I have to do this, do I have to, like, it is all day long. And then you have a 3-year-old who just, 3-year-olds, they just be doing the uttermost. And so you have that phase of just, y'all know what a toddler phase is. They're still so sweet. They still want to be on your body all day long. Either they're running crazy and you have to like save them from themselves, or they want to hang on you. And that's a whole other, like, especially for moms, that's a whole other feeling when you don't have that autonomy. And so, but she's also wants to be just like them. So she's a lot funnier. She's sarcastic. She says things that I don't know if a 3-year-old should be saying, but she's doing it for laughs. And she wants to be just like Zane. So, he can go outside and shoot arrows. She's going to follow behind him. I don't know how safe that is, but like, it's just everybody's in their own phase. And there can be a drain from mentally needing to be where almost 13-year-old, she'll be 13-year-old this year, almost 13-year-old, where she is a totally different place than just the 3-year-old that wants to be held, who wants to eat all the snacks, who doesn't want to finish her dinner. And then the 9-year-old in the middle, only boy, who's sensitive, who's thoughtful, but who also has their wrestles what they're going through. And, just to be present for all of that is like a lot, especially during a pandemic. And as a side note, especially during a time where there's like so much trauma in the country and in the world. You guys, you've watched the news. Trump's not president anymore. Thank God. Sorry if you feel differently, but I just felt like the news was just constant on like, offensive things that he said, things that, he did that we had to worry about. The response to COVID, and even with the whole inflammatory, disrespectful China virus, just Kung flu, all of that derogatory, hateful speech that just came out of his mouth just so frequently. And I think, argue with your mama if you disagree, but that I think that leads up to something like what happened in Atlanta with the murder of the 8 people in the massage parlors. And that kind of stuff can just wear on you, day in and day out. Just the trauma of us being able to have access to every single horrible thing that's going on in the world. And it's interesting. I said my niece was in town, and she and I were driving in Atlanta. I was taking her around, trying to show her some schools because she wants to move here. And we pulled right up on the crime scene tape of that shooting. I hadn't been online or on the news or anything. And it was actually really fresh. I think we pulled up there. The shooting, I think, was like around 5 something. And we pulled up fresh, like at 6 something, trying to find Home Goods, which is like all I do. Y'all pray for me. And we didn't know what it was, but we knew it was something crazy because there was a news crew there and, crime scene tape, and the traffic was just atrocious. We eventually finagled our way around it and later found out what was going on. But, even her dad, my brother, was, immediately worried and calling her because he heard about it. And, so that stuff just puts stress on you and weighs on you on top of, just being with 3 souls day in and day out. And so I've just been starting to think like, what kind of conversations do I need to have to do this well? I feel like I have one that was just brought into life and who needs to learn everything, who knows how to write a little bit and who knows her ABCs, but, hasn't learned to read or do many big things in life. And I have one that sometimes feels like, she's almost out the door, and one that I see is just right behind her. And so I started pulling some friends today, and I actually want to keep this going. So if you're my friend and you haven't answered this yet, I think that this is something I want to keep going. And I want to open this up as like something to you guys. Like I want to hear, from y'all about some of these parenting questions that I asked them, because I really think that we all need to surround each other. And apart from like books, it's very difficult for me to read a parenting book from a person that I don't know, because there's so much comparison. I'm like, I don't have your life. I don't know, you very well. So it's very difficult for me just to go, to vibe with that. A lot of times, especially for the background I come from, and this is no shade, I'm just trying to be honest with y'all. I've read a lot of parenting books from like, the white evangelical circles. And sometimes the wording to me doesn't match how I feel day in and day out. It's sometimes it's so, it feels mythical and like it's grace and love, and everything feels just soft all day long. And then I go, okay, well, what do I do as a sinner, clearly, who gets agitated, who's overworked, who's overrun, who is consumed not by just these relationships, but by, marriage and, like I said, things in the outside world, the stress of watching people get murdered every day. And, so, it's kind of like, how can I build a community around people that just freely speak about where they are and then encourage us to move forward? Because after talking to Ashley, I realized I'm like, most of us know what we're doing wrong, but we need to be encouraged that we're doing the best we can, and that, we're going to mess up, but that we are also doing really good things. And I really wish I could have Zipporah on here tonight. But I don't know if she'd be ready for that, because I would like to have an honest conversation about, parenting and kidding, so to speak. And, some of their views on how I'm doing, not for like a show, but I think sometimes we need to talk to our kids about how we're doing, because we're so hard on ourselves, and sometimes we need to hear from them. So I do want to share with y'all some of the questions that I asked my friends and some of the answers that I got. Okay, so this will be a little bit informal. What I really want to happen is kind of to build a bit of a conversation online about this. After a couple of episodes, I've done lives, and if it works out, I'd like to do a live with people talking about this, maybe different friends, maybe some of you. But I don't have any answers today for myself with my kids. I'd actually like to talk more about that in a conversation with, another guest at another time, to make this an ongoing conversation. But I've just been thinking about it so much, and, how I've been so deep in my feelings about, am I doing the right thing? Am I who I set out to be? Am I missing moments? And really just the exhaustion sometimes of navigating my own life. Like, I could smooth, and I know how y'all are, so let me be careful. I ain't gonna even tell the number. I could smooth lose several pounds. I have not been faithful in quarantine, but that stuff not only just like weight, but that messes with like my mental health, that messes with like my energy. And so like, I'm really trying to manage my own self. Like, I need to eat vegetables. Like, I need to parent my own self, right? That's the thing in counseling, where you like kind of need to reparent yourself. I need to do that, but also I need to make sure that like every day there's like a weight in my body of like trying to get my son to not only eat carbohydrates. And people can say, stop buying certain things. I think our house is pretty scaled back. You know what I mean? And our kids know how to cook, and we very much want them to be independent in that way. And so, but when you let a 9-year-old cook, he's gonna saute and oil up everything. So, it's just a lot, to manage yourself and small people, and be in a lifelong relationship with somebody, and have friends, and have hobbies and talents and gifts. So, I kind of just been asking my friends as well. And I didn't get a lot of responses immediately, so I want to keep this conversation going. But I want to ask you this question. So, if you have a pencil or a piece of paper, or if you aren't 100 and you have a phone and you want to write this down instead of going to find a pencil and paper, what am I talking about? You can write these things down, and I'd like to answer them online and talk about them in some avenue. So this is what I pose to my friends, and I'll talk a little bit. I won't fully answer mine. I want to kind of answer ours online together. But I got a couple things, answers from a couple friends that really just encouraged me where I was, where I stood. And so I asked, what kind of parent would you say you are? Do you have a style? Have you intentionally or unintentionally established a way of parenting? And, that's very difficult to answer. So I do want to hear from y'all. But I got some encouraging words from a friend. One of them I'll share specifically. I have a few, but one thing I have to quote a friend. I don't know if she'd be comfortable with me naming her, so I won't name her. But one thing that she said about establishing the kind of parent that she is, she said, I wanted to be the mom who does all the things, but I'm not the mom who does all the things. And so she had to learn to be okay with that. And I think any mom can understand that. When I became a mom, I thought, okay, I'm looking around y'all be doing crafts and stuff. I didn't really do a ton of crafts when I was little. My aunts would, do things with us, my mom if she could, but it wasn't play dates and crafts every, scheduled weekend and, going to every sporting event. There is a mom out there that we all kind of look at and go, how are you doing all the things? And especially in the evangelical space that I came from, and I actually lived near this friend for a long time, so I can think of a lot of the moms that she might be referencing. But, at some point you have to go, I'm not the mom that can do all the things and maintain my mental health or the job that I have to work, that this person doesn't have to work, or, homeschool that this person doesn't have to do, or, and I'm just speaking generally, but we all have different lives. And so her conclusion was I have to know that I can give my kids my time, but I don't have to live in a state of comparison. And I know that's a big struggle for a lot of moms. And so I wanted to share what she said because that really hit me dead on. Another thing, and I won't share all of them, one of my friends talked about, and I really look up to this friend. I don't think any of us parent perfectly, but I do appreciate that even with the energetic kids that she is such a patient mother. And that I do not have all the time. I have some patience, but not the way that I see within her. And so she talked about how her parenting journey, she used to just enforce first-time obedience. And I think that we learned that in a specific subculture, first-time obedience. And then as they got older, she just morphed into talking about their character. We cannot make you do every single thing, but we can talk to you about what it means to be an honorable person and listen, And so, and letting them know that they have a choice in how they act, think, and sort of move them towards God's abundance is what she said. So I thought that was beautiful. And as far as myself, I guess my parenting style is I stay home with my kids. And I think the thing I want to talk about with my friends and family as days go on is that I'm mostly afraid sometimes that being present all the time has its drawbacks, because sometimes I think I substitute my presence with being present. And I'm not always present because I'm always there. And so because I'm there, sometimes I think they're just getting more than what they are. And it's funny because my sister-in-law was in town and she talked about how she felt that when I'm with, her or other people, that when people come to my house, the reason why I'm so tired people leave, because I try to really engage them and be present where they were. And I thought, man, I hope that my kids would say that about me for them, that I didn't give that away to lots of other people, but I gave that to them. And I'm not sure right now that they would say that. And so, I would say, gosh, my parenting style, right now, especially in pandemic, I am just, I'm like the caretaker. I want to make sure you're safe. That's like my mode. And so anyway, I want to talk about my stuff later. I don't want to get into it now. I just want to share some of these thoughts that encourage me. The other question I want you guys to write down and let's talk about on a continual basis, and hopefully I can get some guys in this room and interview them from their perspective. But are there some things from your childhood, funny or not, that you swore you'd never do that your parents did but find yourself doing? And one of the girls' things I think was really personal, and I'll try to be vague, but I really appreciated the honesty. It was more of like, when she was younger, when her mom was disappointed in her, there was a face that she made, there was a thing that she did to where she really thought, man, have you not forgiven me, Mom? Like kind of after time went by. And she says that she finds herself doing that to her kids. And she wants to kind of live in a way that says like, this thing that's happening in the moment, it's not who you're always going to be. It's not who you are, but we do need to address it right now. But I can't treat you like, you have this scarlet letter of whatever the thing is you're dealing with. And boy, did that hit me, because I can understand that. And so I really appreciate her saying that and sharing that. Another question that I would ask is, well, let me think about I'm going to do a funny one. I can do a serious one later, but I think when you're young and you see your mom or dad and they're, they get in a tizzy about something, and you're like, when I'm older, I am going to let my kids off the hook, or I'm not going to be as mean or as agitated. And there are just days where I'm like, yo, I must have really got on my mom's nerves, especially me in the middle of two brothers. And I just look back and go, man, I swore I wouldn't say this line or do that. I don't know if I should say this, but, let's just say I myself, and I know friends too, that like if we went to bed and we didn't clean up the kitchen when my mom said, she might come wake you up out of your sleep. Sometimes with discipline, sometimes with hey, get up and do it. And I don't do that, but boy, has it dawned on me. I used to think that was so wrong, but it has dawned on me repeatedly, like I should go in there and get them because they did not, so it's funny that you can find so much sympathy and empathy for your parents, especially, I'm married. I have a husband who's present with his children, and I did not have a dad in the home growing up. And so you think about a mom, single with 3 kids, the level of frustration that there must have been, just to get us to listen to her, especially because a lot of times we were latchkey kids and she wasn't home. And so you come home and you're exhausted. You want things to be a certain way. And she probably nagged, I would assume, more than now she would have ever wanted to do. She probably wanted to have the bandwidth and the capacity just to sit down with us and like snuggle us and say, how was your day? But most of the time she was just like, okay, I got to get to the next thing, kind of in survival mode. And sometimes I feel like I live in survival mode with my kids, even though, I am not the one out working, and I don't know if that's like passed down, that energy, or if that's just what I feel because I am with them all day. I don't know. But sometimes I think I have, I've acquired some habits that I would just like to get rid of, because I do think that children, who, as crazy as they be acting, they are just such precious, valuable people whose mental capacity and brains are just, they're smart as ever, but, they're not where we are. They're not hardened by life yet. And sometimes you can really injure them by your words. And so I just want to be softer with them. And I imagine that my mom and a lot of our moms and dads probably wanted to be with us as well, but just didn't have the capacity at the time. And that's a word that we've been using kind of the last couple of years, is like, man, capacity. Not all of us have the same capacity as the next person. And so we're not going to be able to give from an overflow. Some of us are empty. Some of us are halfway. And you have to stop comparing yourself to a full cup. And another friend talked about how, when her mom needed to take a nap when she was younger, like There was no getting into her room or bothering her. Boy, do I wish I could establish that. And she talks about how she was always like, that's too much. And even as an adult, when she calls her mom during rest time, her mom will still answer because, she's her daughter and there could be a concern. But she's still a little annoyed, like, why are you calling me during my rest time? But that she also has kind of carried over into that. I just think that stuff is really funny because it's like, boy, we swore we were going to be better than these people. And turns out the apple really don't fall far from the tree. So, again, a question for you. I want to talk about online. Have you brought in any unhealthy parenting traits of your parents that you wish you'd left in the past? And I do think this is really personal, so I won't share a lot here. But one thing that one of my friends said, and I didn't actually know what this was, so I had to ask her, kind of ask her, what is this? But she talked about a concept, and maybe this is something that everybody knows about, but she talked about something called positive toxicity. And I was like, I don't know what that is. And so she said a lot of other things, but when I asked her about that specifically, she talked about having a parent that was into the power of positive thinking, and that with that, it didn't allow people to be human sometimes. So positive messages were almost used to gloss over hard truths rather than to acknowledge them. And, a lot of people actually do that. Like if you have someone in your family, pass away, or you're really hurt about something, someone will try to come for you first with just like, well, here's why you should not be upset because of insert a positive thing. And I'm sure they mean really, they're trying to aid you, but sometimes that positivity can become toxic because you're using, this positive reinforcement at the wrong time when somebody actually needs help. I need to be corrected. I need to be told the hard truth. And so I'd never heard of that before, but boy, when she talked about that, kind of, and maybe I'll have her go live with her and talk about, how that affected her. So anyways, I really appreciated just kind of that avenue that I hadn't actually thought about. Okay. So again, I'm not going to answer that question because I think that would get real deep and I don't want to keep this because I want to talk about this online at some point. Okay. So let's see. The next question, I have to go back. Okay. So did your parents or parent establish something that you now understand to be meaningful that you didn't appreciate as a kid? God, I have lots of, one of my friends, her dad was a pastor, and, I think tons of things that he said enriched her life in ways that she probably didn't realize. That was harder for me because obviously my mom and my family always were giving me important things. So actually it's coming to me as I sit here. But at the time, I guess I didn't realize, God, you know what? I'm thinking about my arrogance. I think at the time I thought, well, I'm not going to do that, or I'm not going to become that. So I don't actually really have to take that in. That's a very arrogant way to think. But I do think maybe some of my disdain for all of the warning signs that they gave to me was actually coming from a life lived that can say, no, I'm telling you this because I've been through it. And though you think it's ugly or that you couldn't possibly have this happen to you, the Bible says, take heed that you stand lest you fall. And I think, there was a season in my life, not always, but there was a season in my life as I got older that I just, I just kind of wanted to run from some of the things that I thought were like toxic in my family. And so I almost kind of looked down on it. And I think that they actually taught me that like, no, at any point, anything can be you. And to honor and respect where a person was in a season of their life. That people always quote I believe the Maya Angelou quote, when you know better, you do better. And I think, God, you don't know where life's going to meet you. Sometimes life meets you, your trauma happens at, 50. Sometimes it meets you at 16 when you're vulnerable. Sometimes it meets you at 4 when you're the pinnacle of a victim. And so you just need to have grace and mercy on from what has met people in certain seasons. And I don't think I had a respect for that for a long time until I probably was an adult, married and, had kids, and didn't even realize I actually looked down on it, to be honest with you. So that's actually vulnerable for me to say, but I think that my mom, my family taught me just kind of by example, a lot of times, just, you know, that people have to live their story and you can learn from it and not repeat in those patterns. So another question I would want you guys to ask yourselves so that we can talk about it, or that you can talk amongst yourselves or with your spouse, is are you the kind of parent that you thought you'd be? And one of my friends I thought was interesting said that they never thought they'd be a parent, which is really interesting because people get married, have lots of kids, and, she has lots of kids. And she said, when I found myself as one, I felt like I was trying to figure out that answer in the midst of parenting. And I think that's what's felt like all of parenting to me. I think I really look back at when my daughter was born. I really felt like, and I know I've heard a lot of parents say this, but I really felt like y'all just gonna send me home? Like, there's not like a pamphlet or even you took her back to that nursery and you were checking on her and making sure she was like breathing appropriately. Is there something do I need to take home a machine? Is there a breathing machine that I could have? Like my son and my youngest daughter had jaundice. Like, should I take home a contraption? Like, it really just felt like, y'all are just really letting us take home people. It just felt odd. And so I do think like it's all been on the fly, and then it's, and sometimes, I don't know, you don't go back to the well because you're ashamed or you don't think there's anything there for you. It's just been such a learning process, and you want to do your things your own way sometimes. And sometimes that's good to establish new things, but sometimes like we just all need help. So I thought that was very much the truth. And I really appreciate her saying that. And I hope that, more of you guys can give yourselves grace, and myself too, as we learn on the fly what it means to be a parent, because each season is different. I don't think that it's going to I've heard that it's not going to get any easier, but that in different seasons, there's different challenges. Okay, and 2 more questions I want you to ask yourself that we can talk about. What's the one thing you'd tell a new parent about parenting that you think is invaluable? One friend said, I'll just skip to her. She said, your kids will teach you more about parenting than you think that you'll need to know from them. Patience, resilience, and that it's okay to learn from them. And I would say my biggest teacher, I agree with that, my biggest teacher in parenting has been my children. I mean, because nothing takes me like, a time warp back to the future or whatever, like back to being little Dontoya, than looking in the eyes of like my 9-year-old, my 3-year-old, remembering what I wanted when I was 12 and trying to wrestle with now, is it good to give her this? Am I withholding, or have I learned enough to go, you don't need that right now? Like, I just see so much in them that kind of teaches me how to parent. Their grace for me when I mess up, their softness, their gentleness, like kids are a blessing. It's such a job. It's difficult, but it's true. They will teach you more about forgiveness. I mean, you look at them and you apologize when you've done wrong, and they really want to receive you. There's no like, okay, well, I guess not right now, not at this age that I see. And so I'm really grateful for them, and I believe that is invaluable. And I would tell that to any new parent, and I would tell that to myself. And I think also people always say, and it's so very true, the little years, the days are long, but the years are fast. And, I think that's why I'm in struggle mode so much right now, because I have a 3-year-old and a 12-year-old. I can see in both of them, like I said, one just starting out and one a little bit slipping away. So, and for me, the math is like when Zari, my youngest, is, basically Zipporah's age that she is now, which that seemed like that happened too quick. Zipporah will be long out of the house, like long gone. And so it's a wild ride. And then the final question, how hard has it been to parent multiple kids with different personalities? And that's where I am right now. That's why I asked that question, because I want to hear from y'all, because that's the thing. It's not just the personality. It's the different seasons of life. It's the, you still need me to make all your food and you cook for yourself and then go up to your room. Like it's all the seasons of life. It's algebra, it's letters, it's wanting to be more independent and get to do things and wanting to sit in your lap. Like it's just a range of emotions and really, I think what I'm wrestling with the most right now, and I'd be interested in hearing from you guys, is, again, it's just trying to establish the personhood and the confidence into 3 people, and then also as an adult still needing that for yourself and needing to do that, and by the end of the day just wanting to crash down on a bed and just sleep until Jesus wakes me up, and not a 3-year-old or my husband stomping around the bedroom like he's wearing Jodeci boots. But I'm gonna let that pass because I go to bed late and I do stomp around and wake him up. But yeah, so I think that that's the hardest phase for me right now. And so I just wanted this to be like a primer. I want to have future guests, and I'm not going to say a name, but I do have somebody who I want to come on. So hopefully he'll say yes to talk to me specifically about parenting. And I just want this to be something that's ongoing because that's where I am right now. I imagine that a lot of you are right there. And when I was speaking to Ashley, I just felt the weight of the shame of comparison and, how heavy the job is. So I think it's a conversation that needs to be ongoing. So this podcast, I really just want to talk to y'all about where I was and what I'm thinking about. And, really how other people's stories are really awakening in me, my own story. And so I really have been gleaning a lot from books right now and, TV shows, and y'all need to pray for me. I was gonna talk about what I was watching, but I'm just so embarrassed. I watch the most random things, like nothing really new and cool. I watch like The Crown and stuff like that. But low key, I have an obsession with watching shows like My 600-Pound Life. Don't judge me. It's I want to understand the like mental behind it. Like maybe it's my like need to like what can I do to avoid or like keep my kids from. I know it sounds psycho, but don't judge me. It's not like voyeurism or something weird. It really is like help me understand the psychology behind. I don't watch it, but I would watch something like Hoarders. Like I'd watch like murder shows. Like I'm really messed up. So don't ask me what I'm watching because it'll be really depressing. But if y'all have anything that y'all are watching, let me know. Thank y'all for listening to this. I really just want to start a conversation, not even have a full-on conversation, just give some primers and start something up. So hopefully we can do some sort of dialogue. If I can't go live, which I'll definitely try to, maybe we can just do some Q&A in stories or through some other avenue. I think this is something that a lot of people need. We all need help with this. Every single one of my friends' parents, totally different. I was on the phone with a friend today and we were just talking about sometimes how hard it is to parent in community. I mean, all of our kids are different. All of our parenting styles are different. I definitely am the friends that I keep in my life, I definitely could send my kid to their house and be like, hey, if they say you're wrong, you're wrong. They don't need to explain to me that they had to say something to you because I trust them. That's most of my friends. And I believe that most of them are like that too. But not everybody has that community. However, we may be talking about other subjects like, if we'll, the kind of way we, medicate or, feed our kids or whatever, we're not going to agree on all of that. So it's still good to dialogue in a way that's like not in comparison and that's not like sensitive and that you will offend somebody. So I thought this would be a good way to approach the topic. So thank y'all for listening. Y'all have been really kind to me, to this podcast. And I initially set out to just this season do 10 episodes, and I'm almost there. I'm right there. And you guys have been very conversational, very encouraging, very loving, and very fun to do this with. So I appreciate y'all. Thank you. And let's continue this conversation because y'all, I'm the one that needs to help. So thanks for listening.